Hello again! If you recall, we've drawn boxes from different points of perspective, we've drawn cityscapes, and we recently finished pyramids. Now we're going to look at a simple house, a ranch-style house that you'd see in many Southern California or southwestern cities. And we start like we always do, with two-point perspective. You can do this in one, possibly even three-point, but most customarily, these types of homes are drawn in two-point perspective. If you look at the real estate page of most newspapers, it's pretty common. So we draw a box. Here's the important thing to remember. If you make the box too long and flat, either the house is gigantic or only midgets live in it because it's not very tall. So you have to think in proportion. So this looks reasonable. It's not quite square, it's a bit of a rectangle. So if you were looking down on the house, you would probably see it's rectangular in shape. So I decided to make it this tall, this wide, and this long. You can experiment. Now, to find the center of either this side or this side, just like we did on the base of the pyramids, we draw from opposite corners a straight line. And what happens when you do that, you find the center, which in this case is here. If you draw a vertical line through that, that will tell you where, if you have a roof on the house that is not flat but pointed, where the point would be. Now you notice that this space is bigger than this space. Even if you could see it on the side here, you would notice these two are the same width. But because we're drawing in perspective and you're looking into the drawing, since this is closer to you, it's going to be bigger than this side, which is further from you. But it is centered according to the drawing. So this vertical line will show you where the peak of the roof will be. If you have a high-pitched or a sharp roof, it'll be very high. If you have something in the southwest where it doesn't rain much, we don't need real sharp peaks, and they tend to be a little lower. So this is modestly high, not too high. My guess is this is probably around 35 to maybe 40 degree angle. You don't have to be precise, just eyeball it. If it looks right, it's okay. So now I have the crown here, and this is where the house will be. Now, the key is the roof is going to go all the way along the front of the house. It's going to cover the entire house top. So I have to draw a line from this vanishing point to the peak. And as it continues, that would be where the roof line would be. See this line here? The line here at the back of the house should be parallel. Normally, artists, what they will do is they will actually make this a little flatter, just slightly. Because as it's further away, that will give that impression. But for you, just make it parallel. When you erase the lines you don't need, now you see that you basically have a rectangular box for the house, and it looks like a triangle here that becomes a triangular prism as the roof. Of course, if you have a house, you need windows and you need doors. Here's something that will happen. If you made a gigantic door here, this wouldn't look like a house, it'd look like a dog house. On the other hand, if you made a really tiny door that's only this tall, this would look like a gigantic warehouse. So things have to be proportionate. If you look at most homes, the doors tend to be just under 7 feet tall, and the walls are usually 8 or 9 feet. So you probably want to divide this into eighths or ninths. And then what you do is you only go up to that level. So what I did is I made the estimate here. This would be where the top of the door or the windows would be. And I drew a line from this vanishing point to the corner and from this vanishing point, and that showed me where the top would be. Then to find the center of this side of the house, I drew an X from those opposite corners. I did the same here and drew a vertical line. So this is actually the back half of the house. This is the front half. Or if you were looking at it this way, this would be one side, that would be the other side, but this is exactly the midpoint. When you look at people's homes, you can tell somebody has made a home a do-it-yourselfer. And usually the way to tell is, if the top of the window is higher than the door or lower than the door, you know somebody who did it didn't get a contractor's license or a plan. They just put the window where they thought they wanted it. But normally the windows can be no taller than the height of the door, and they tend to be about 30 to 33 inches from the bottom. So if you divided this into 5 pieces, 2 pieces from the bottom, and these are 3 pieces, and that's where your windows would be. And you see I made a door here, and since this is the center, you can draw an X if you want here, and you can find out one side of the door to the other so you have it evenly spaced. Now I wanted to start putting windows in. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 windows. The windows that are closest to you have to be bigger. The windows that are further away from you have to be smaller. Otherwise it's going to look really weird. It won't look three-dimensional. So what I did was I used this vanishing point for the bottom of the window as I did in the previous drawing. So I knew the window had to be inside here. The key is then, how do you make it the right width to be proportionate? Well, that's not as difficult as it would seem. The width of the window here, I ballparked. I said that looks like it's right. So I drew the first window without anything else but just 2 vertical lines. I said now that I have that one established, I want all the other windows to be the same size in real, but in the picture they'll look different size. So what happens is you draw a line from the top corner here to the bottom opposite corner, and then if you want a window that is the exact same size for the drawing, I put a spacer between here. I drew the vertical line of this particular side of the window. I used this line and drew a parallel line to it. So these 2 lines here are parallel. When I make these parallel, wherever this one ends up at the bottom here, that's how wide the window will be. And I drew a vertical line. And that's how I got this one. Even though this one is smaller in the picture, in real life, looking at it, if you're looking straight at it this way, they would be identical in size. This window is a lot further away, but I did exactly the same thing. I used this line. I said this is one side of the window. I used that line and made a parallel one here, came up, and sure enough, even though this window is smaller in the picture, if you were to look at the front of the house, it would be identical. I followed the exact same format for the 3 windows on this side of the house. When I erased all the lines, you see how it looks proportionate. The windows look right for the house, so does the door. It's not a big house, but it looks nice. But of course, if you have a house, you're going to need a street. So I decided to draw a street. And of course, the street is actually over here. If you have a house, you need a walkway from the front door. So again, I use the vanishing points. And you need a driveway. And eventually here, we're going to have to put a garage. And sure enough, I started building the garage. So what happens is, if you take a look, this line, which comes from this arrow, and this line, these 2 lines are parallel. That way you know that the slope or the angle of the roof line on the house is the same as the slope or angle line of the garage. And you notice that I had to make the front wider than the driveway because otherwise it would look kind of funny. The driveway would be partially to the garage and partially go nowhere. So the other thing we need is a door. But the door is usually a little bit narrower than the width of the garage. And sure enough, you notice that I put it right here, so it's about as wide as the driveway, but not as wide as the garage. When you erase the lines you don't need, you start to see you have a ranch-style house with a gable roof, that's what this is called, and a garage that's attached. You've got your driveway and a walkway. But you need more than that. When you look at homes, even mobile homes, the actual roof extends a little bit beyond the basic frame of the house. And the part that hangs out over it is called an eave. So you would have eaves all around the house, including the garage. So what we need to do is we need to extend the roof lines. Now, what I did here was I took the vanishing point here, extended it here, so that I could extend the roof by what could be 1.5 feet, 2 feet here. I also extended it a little bit here. Because this line is further away from this space is wider than that, making it look smaller because it's further. I did the same with the garage, made it even narrower than this, and came down. Also, I had to bring the eaves down further, so what I did was, after I got the crown here, I went further here, and you notice that it hangs over. Now, not only does it hang over on the front of both the garage and the house, it also hangs over in the back. So using this vanishing point, from this point, I knew how far the eave would go. Then using this point, from this vanishing point, I knew how it came out here. It's a little hard to see here, but let's see what happens when we erase a few lines. I erase a few of the lines and darken the ones you need to see, and I think it's a little clearer how the eaves hang over. Erase more, making it a little bit clearer. Erasing even more, and you notice now that the eaves hang over, and now it's proportional. The next thing we need to do is we do a little shading, give it some texture. This ran into a little bit of a problem because I used some white out previously, so when you shade over it doesn't work as well, but basically you shade a little bit. To make the windows look like glass, you use the side of the pencil and just make it squiggle back and forth. Here it made the door, shaded it, put a little knob here, gave it a little bit of a design, put lines across for the garage door, and then slight tan or shading for the concrete of the walkway and the driveway. Then I put some shrubbery here, and again, you just use the pencil. Don't draw every leaf and every branch. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to look that closely. You just kind of squiggle a little bit. Then what I did is I shade a little bit on the top of the windows to give the impression of depth, like there's a thickness to the walls. Then I erased some parts I didn't need. So I got away from some of the boxy look and darkened the shrubs a little. I also put in a few hills in the background, and now it looks like you have your ranch house out in the boonies. Boonies means out in the countryside where aren't too many people.